those of you who are following along in the book, you'll notice that today we're going to skip chapter 8. To be honest, it's several. I mean, it's a big one, and I'm still studying it. I'm still researching it. I'm still not confident that I'm ready to present it. So we'll skip it, go to the next two, and I think both of these are small enough we can get them both done in one day. Effectively, if not, we'll punt. But we're going to start with chapter 9 today. You fool is the topic. It comes during the Sermon on the Mount, as Jesus is shocking the world with many new novel ideas that cause surprise, and he ties it back to the 6th commandment. Morning, Larry.
Morning, guys. Sorry I'm late.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
You need that fan.
Yeah.
It will create a constant stream of data.
Yeah, sorry.
There's the motion.
It's off. It just
Okay.
slowing down.
No problem. Glad you get hooked up.
Yes.
So anyway, the 6th commandment, thou shalt not kill. Jesus greatly expands the meaning of that and brings it the underlying problems to light. And it comes from, the key verse comes from Matthew. And this is, I've been reading out of the King James and then out of the Battery Bible. And today it brings up an important difference between the two. And it surprised me because I hadn't identified it before. So many of these things so far, each one of them has surprised me in some way or another. Things that I just had assumed that I knew and understood, all of a sudden I see something new. So this study is benefiting me. I hope it is all of you. So Matthew 5:22. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of a judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Now, I'll read it out of the Holman Christian Bible. But I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment, and whoever says to his brother, fool, will be subject to the Sanhedrin. But whoever says, you moron, will be subject to hellfire. There's a slight difference.
Way to go.
Shouldn't be so obstinate. Okay, so but before we get into the author's study, I want to say a few things. First, a question: is it justified to strike at someone because of the words they say to you? Is it ever justified?
The question, them's fighting words. Is that the question?
Yeah. What if they make a threat to you? At what point in time do you have the right to physically react to someone's words?
Have their words invited the beating?
Okay. You make points. Didn't everybody learn the nursery, the children's rhyme, sticks and stones make great my bones? The words will never hurt me. I can hear my mother say that right now. Me and my brothers in the back room, fisting up and fighting. Why are y'all fighting? Well, he called me. Well, he called me. Well, sticks and stones may break my bones. in a country, in a society where we have freedom of speech, people are getting more and more blatantly uncivil in the way they talk to each other. Social media, that kind of thing. But our laws are based on tit for tat. If somebody calls you a name, you can call them a name back, but that's it. If you throw the first punch, you're the one who has created an assault. You've created a crime. It's not a crime because we have free speech. Now, with some, you can be cause a civil disturbance. Some jurisdictions will arrest you for that as a misdemeanor. But my point is that it's our modern society allows a certain amount of uncivility through the legal system. And it's been a while, but there used to be duels. When somebody felt offended, I have the right to challenge you to a duel. You can either apologize publicly to me, or we're going to shoot at each other in public till one of us is dead. That kind of thing. But it's curious, but the last death by duel was in 1386 in France. But there was a duel in 1967 with swords in France. Two guys, two politicians, a mayor and a city councilman, got into it, and they did the whole. They've got it on video. They got a videotape of it, and they had the little swords and they cut each other. Neither one of them died, but anyway. Okay, so let's go back to what Jesus is saying here. The sixth commandment was a capital offense at that time in the Middle East. Still is some places here today, some places not. But the penalty was death. If you murder someone, the penalty is death. It can't be abrogated below that. The offense required death as the response. If it was an accident, then there was a method for treating it as something other than a murder. But you had to be careful because there was vigilante, retribution. If the family of the murdered person, even if it was an accident, would often come after you and try to get vengeance and kill you in return. And they had cities. You could go to a safety city for a period of time and then deal with it in that way. But if it was a murder that was intentional, then if there was two or more witnesses, then the elders of the village would sentence you to stoning to death, and the witnesses would pick up the first stones and start the avalanche, and then the rest of the city would join in, and people would be stoned to death for crime.
Right. Manslaughter can only charge you with what you do. God's law takes into effect what you think. That's illustrating these two verses. The verse that comes prior to the one you read actually talks about the act of murder, which is something you do. But then it gets into talking about what you think and how you respond verbally.
Yep, exactly.
So it covers both of those there.
Yep. Yep.
So it's a play on words, but you said accident. The case given is if the axe head flies off and strikes the guy dead, you'll be accident.
It's spelled differently.
It's got a little else.
Yeah, and we call that today manslaughter. Negligent manslaughter. If you don't take appropriate and modest,
Liability.
Yeah. If you're recklessly endangering people and someone dies, then you're still committing a crime by our law, and can be charged with it. Otherwise, it's a civil matter. But as Mike pointed out, Jesus says in this verse that it's not just the murder that's bad. it's the steps before the murder. It's the angry thought that you have. And that angry thought can't be seen by men. I can't sit here and say any one of you is angry or not angry about a thing or a person, because I can't see anger. Sometimes some people are so you maybe can, but you can't measure somebody's anger as we can. God can. God knows it. And this judgment that it talks about is you're subject to judgment just for being angry, for holding that emotion, having that thought. God judges your heart for it. And if you track this all the way back, why would God judge you for being angry if you don't do anything about it? If you don't say anything, don't call him by a name, why would God be angry? I mean, why would God judge you for being angry? Well, because what is God's law commandment to us? Love your neighbor, love your brother as you love yourself. Well, you can't be angry and love somebody at the same time. So it offends God for us to have any emotion other than love for one another. So anger causes judgment. And if you let that anger evolve into words, if you let that anger out and make it known to the person you're angry at, then it creates another level of offense. It gets you charged by the court or the Sanhedrin or the council, whoever's in charge. And the last step is if you get the person you're angry with angry also, and now you have a situation where two people are angry at each other and wanting to resolve their anger, and you end up with violence. So that's what the angry thought in your mind leads to if it's not dealt with or quashed. Now, the King James Version, I said that they were different, and they are, because in the King James Version, it says that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger. That without a cause was not in the original Greek transcript. It was something that was added by the translators, and anyone can guess at why, but it makes it easier for those people who have a tendency to get anger to think, well, my anger is justified. In this case, I'm right to be angry. Well, that was in most of the modern translations, like the second one I read, it does not have that. And I scanned about 30 or 40 different versions of the Bible, and most of them do not have the without a cause. So I think it's fair to say that was the original text, was the original meaning. Jesus didn't add without a cause, because that tends to make me believe that he meant there is no cause. There is no justification for a man to be angry. It's not something that we're supposed to be. It's not an emotion that we're supposed to have. Now, do we have it? Yeah. And as we grow up from young kids, we get angry all the time as a kid, and they will fight and they will argue and they will have spats. So it's something that we have to learn to prevent in our own mind. The author brought up a verse out of Jonah 4:9, and God said to Jonah, "Dost thou well to be angry for the gourd?" And he said, "I do well to be angry, even unto death." I'm mad, and I'm going to stay mad, and nothing's going to change that. I'm going to be mad until I die. That kind of anger, Jonah had some problems, and he had some disagreements with God. So basically, his anger was at God, and we would do much better to not be angry with God. let alone other men. Yeah, I am.
Are you going to address Jesus's anger question?
Yeah, and we're gonna hit that in a minute. Jonah was smitten with anger. Jonah was enjoying his anger. He thought he had a righteous right to judge and determine who should be what and who should get what, and he did not want to let God turn it over and let God deal with it. So anger is not a good thing. In Ephesians 4:6, we're guided as to what to do about anger. Be angry and do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity. So don't be angry. If you get angry, when you get angry, identify it, recognize it, and do away with it. And don't go to bed still angry until you resolve it. Pray, meditate, talk to the person, do whatever you need to do, but don't let it fester. Do not go to bed and let it cause you, because the angrier you get and the longer you hold it, the more likely the devil is to use it to develop some other problems in your life, maybe a lot of problems in your life. That's when your wife's angry, not else.
Kind of like the dog's house.
So if you don't deal with the anger, it's going to lead to something more serious and bother you. I mean, it's your problem. If you get angry and you don't deal with it, you're the one that's going to suffer. So you're not going to get even. That's not going to. Very seldom do you get even for the anger that you hold.
You let it fester, it leads to bitterness.
Yes.
It leads, unresolved anger leads to bitterness.
And that's miserable. And
And Jesus is telling us here that there's an escalation, and he gives you 3 levels. If you're angry, just you're hiding anger, he's going to judge you for that, because you're not loving that person. You're angry, but how can you love them while you're angry? You can't. So that's level 1. But then if you let that anger out, if you use your mouth to focus that anger and call somebody a name, then that's another level of offense. And then everybody, the council, the courts, the judge, everybody gets involved, and you will be judged by them. And then if you go to that 3rd level, where you make somebody else angry by using words, then you have hit the peak. You have hit the point where the violence then is aggressive as additional sin, much more severe sin. In fact, you'll get subject to hellfire. And the word they used for this was the same word they used for the trash dump outside of Jerusalem, where they took all their refuse and trash and carcasses and everything and piled them up and burned them. It was continuously burning. Dennis, are you old enough did you ever go to the dump in the 50s and 60s? They're always on fire because they burnt the trash. People would come and dump it and they'd pile it up with bulldozers, and they'd throw gas on it and burn it. Then they'd start a new pile. And there was always a pile of trash burning at the dump. Don't do that nowadays because we figured out that that's not a good thing. So we use landfills. But I can remember that as a boy, taking limbs and stuff to the trash, to the dump, and it smelled bad, and you'd always get smoke in your eyes. Yeah, we did too. In the front of the house. So anyway, this hellfire is not a pleasant place to be. It's not any place where you want to end up. Now, the term, I'm taking my medicine.
Those pills shaking.
Okay, the term fool this highest level of escalation at the fool is also in Matthew 7:26. And it reads, "And every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand." Matthew 23:17. "Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifieth the gold?" In Matthew 25:2-3. "And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish." This is the young maidens. "They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them." So Jesus identifies people who are foolish, who are fools. But Jesus isn't trying to raise them to violence. He's explaining, defining someone who is a fool. You're not saying, "You fool," to try to irritate them or to raise them to violence. And then, like Dennis said, Jesus, he displayed righteous anger. Well, that is, I guess that depends on how you understand or define anger, but Jesus didn't use anger to try to incite someone else to be violent. He turned over the tables of the people in the temple because what they were doing he found offensive, and he told them it was wrong, and he interfered with them doing it. But his anger wasn't designed to teach them, not to raise them to become violent and have a fight. So you could say he's angry, or you could say he was frustrated. You could say he wanted to stop and interfere with what they were doing because what they were doing was wrong. So I don't know. In what?
Anger and discipline.
Anger
of
and
children.
discipline of children.
Well, I think.
Sorry. He's trying to incite anger.
I think he threw in something at the very last that addresses that. Out of Numbers 20:10, he talks about the situation where Moses, who was leading the Israelites, you would have to think that Moses loved those people and was trying to provide for those people, but they made him so mad because they were always acting stupid. I mean, he told them what they were supposed to do. He showed them what they're supposed to do. And what they do, whatever they wanted to, not what he told them. So he got angry with them, and to the point where he called them rebels. Rebels. Okay, you want water out of this rock? Here it is. But you're rebels to demand it and to act like fools. So, because he was angry with them, God took the promised land away from them. So he was judged and punished by God for the anger that he had towards them. Well, if Moses can't be angry at the Israelites, then how can we be angry at our wives or children or anybody else that disappoints us and that aggravates us and that irritates us? But if you let that develop into anger against them, then it's wrong. It's always wrong. But the way I read this is, Jesus said there's no place, no time that you can have anger. It's not a Christian, it's not a Christian emotion. It's not something that we're supposed to have.
I think a lot of it is there again, because we can't control our actions a lot of times, because I think there are times we're going to be angry. We might be angry because, just an example, my son isn't raising my grandson in church. That makes me angry.
Sure.
But how I react to that, I think is where we have to, I think we're drawing the line, so to speak, because, am I praying about it or am I,
Yeah.
doing something else about it?
Yeah, and that's what it boils down to is what is anger.
Mhm.
Well, you get frustrated because
Right.
you see the right path.
Yeah.
You can't make them walk on the right path.
Yeah.
That's frustrating. and you're hurt because you're worried, because you
Exactly.
know they're in danger and you don't want them to be, all those emotions. But you can have those emotions without being angry. at
Without
them.
acting out, to me,
Yeah.
anger is acting out, expressing that anger. We are going to be angry, but we can control it because the Lord tells us, be angry and sin not. In other words, we are going to have to deal, anger will come to us, but we can reject it by not acting out. And then those levels you were talking about, where you express anger, then you speak anger, then you anger the person. But it's an acting out, an expressing.
Yeah, exactly.
He said, if you make me mad isn't really true.
He made me do it.
Oh, you make me mad, trust me.
I'll add a different facet of the anger and what it kind of leads to. You guys may have heard of before, the Gottman Institute. They do a lot of research on marriage and divorce and how relationships deteriorate. So they picked up, they call them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. What they did is they videotaped a whole lot of couples interactions. And by picking up on these 4, the chance of future divorce was like 70% when these 4 started becoming present. There's criticism, contempt, which is really the important one, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So when they witnessed those 4 within couples, it was just like, okay, you're headed to that path. The contempt was the one that was the biggest one, where you quit respecting whoever you're with, and then you start disdaining them, and you can just watch everything deteriorate. I think anger will do that. When I'm so mad, I just start to loathe whoever it is, and
You stop loving.
you do, and mentally, you never give them a positive spin or a positive take on whatever action it is. It's always they're dumb, they're stupid, they're an idiot. You hear that a lot or you see it a lot in our popular culture stuff where the man is always just a bumbling fool. And that does not inspire confidence or respect in that person. They just become despicable.
Anger produces a lot of negative emotions, many.
Yeah, in the Wednesday night men's class that Clint leads, we touched on anger this last Wednesday night, and we have a gentleman, a brother in that class that doesn't come to church during Sundays, so y'all probably don't know him unless you're coming on Wednesday nights. But anyway, he said last Wednesday night that anger isn't an emotion. And I can't give the full definition, but he said if you study psychology, they determined that anger itself isn't an emotion. It's a combination of these other feelings that we're talking about.
Feelings.
Frustration, hostility, jealousy, greed. There's all kinds of things that you get mad about, but it's because you're jealous of somebody. They got something you didn't get. Oh, I'm mad. Oh, you're really jealous. It's just being expressed as anger. I think that's what he was saying.
I think fear was one of that part.
Yeah.
We're just turning into Cain. We're
Yes,
just turning into Cain way too easy.
yes.
Yeah.
Abel didn't do anything to him physically. He just, there's those other emotions you're talking about.
Right. And in our society, as we get closer to the end of time, whenever that's going to be, I think we'll see men without God don't have any throttle.
They don't have any restraints
There's
whatsoever.
no brakes. There's no restraint. There's no self-awareness of Okay, well, I can't be a good person and have anger. So I choose anger. I like it better.
Pay,
That's
pay
why,
attention to the lights on your dashboard. They're giving you an indication that a problem's happening with your car. Anger's that way.
That's why anger can lead to malice. Which is murder.
And if you're in an aircraft and those lights come on, it could mean that you're gonna die in a couple of minutes if you don't do something, if you don't fix it. My grandsons, everybody's had kids, I think, in here. Little kids get into fights all the time.
Rage.
And they don't recognize the difference, if somebody elbows them and hurts them, they're just mad because somebody hurt them, and the first thing I try to do to diffuse it is, so was it on purpose or was it an accident? I think well, he didn't mean to, but it still hurt. Well, then, how can you be angry at him because of an accident? Do you want me to spank him and hurt him so that you'll feel better about him accidentally hurting you? No. Well, we have a tendency to strike out. Just this last week, we saw a young woman struggling with all kinds of life difficulties, who has been misled, I think, by a false prophet somewhere, to believe that she's really supposed to be a boy, and has been enabled and supported in those unchristian and immoral and wrong ways of thinking, to the point where she's angry enough, including the hormonal treatments that she's getting, which are known to cause violence and anger. She is angry enough to kill people she doesn't even know, because she thinks she identifies them as having caused her problem, or at least contributed to it. So we see anger escalate, just like Jesus said, to the point where people die. And it's unjustified, but it's not. Here's the key. I believe, I can't prove it, but I believe I believe the devil was involved in that young woman's life, to the point where she could not get back. And that's what Jesus is saying. If you let anger evolve all the way to the point where you want death, I want him to die, or I want to die, or both, but I cannot get past this anger until something happens. And that's the danger that Jesus is talking about. And it's real. It's true. It's happening around us every day.
That's what we saw the Pharisees do to Jesus. Their anger. And then
it's gonna interpret.
Story there. Guy had a leaky tire, had to air it up every week. Dennis told me you should take care of that. eventually, Dennis saw it again, said, did you go get that tire fixed? He said, no, I bought an air tank. It's in the back of the truck. And he said, there's the Barney Fife story of you don't need to let it go. You need to nip it in the bud. But that's an example of stories where people will not fix a problem and think they fixed it.
And we do that all the time. I mean, like you were saying with children, we give them choices, and we have those same choices because we can say, okay, you're angry right now. I get that, but these are your choices. Are you gonna walk away, cool off? Or are you gonna, get a spanking because you wouldn't stop or whatever? And we have those same choices. God gives us those choices to say, am I gonna act on that? Am I gonna say something that's gonna offend my husband, or whatever? Or am I gonna take 5 minutes and pull off, So, we all have choices of mine.
And we're always the example. We're aware of it, when you're dealing with kids, if you act while you're angry at them,
Right.
and again, you don't ever really get angry at a little kid, not if you're normal, but you get frustrated,
Yes.
you get irritated, you get worn out because it's
Yeah.
been a long
And
day.
mommy needs to
And
come
we've
out.
done those times, and now we're gonna do it again. So but you cannot let it appear to them that you're doing it in anger, because
Right.
then that gives them an excuse to be angry themselves.
My dad used to wait to give us a spanking. And of course it wore us out, but you're like, just spank us now. But
That
really,
fear of waiting.
but he would wait until his anger had dissipated or his frustration or whatever. Cause he's like, I'm gonna spank you out of anger. That's not gonna be good, or
So-
whatever.
Yeah, so now if you transfer that same thing, how we deal with our children, who we love,
Right.
transfer that same to adults that frustrate us, irritate us, aggravate us. We should treat them, especially the non-Christians, always the Christians, obviously, brothers and sisters. But strangers that we don't know, we should treat them the same way.
Right.
If somebody cuts you off,
Yeah.
you don't do the anger symbols and the signs. You,
Give them the sign.
you smile at them. I give the peace sign, or I give love,
Yeah.
if you smile at someone who is angry at you, it's hard for them to get angrier.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
normally
dissipate that. a
it
lot.
starts diffusing it. That's our goal, because we are the example. If we meet anger with anger, we're no better than the other side. And that's what Jesus meant, I believe, in this verse. And for some reason, for long years, we added in unless it's justified. Well, okay, my anger is justified. I have a reason to be angry, just like Jonah. But take it to no, that doesn't serve anybody, don't help it. That's my take on it, guys. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time.